evening, spiritual warriors. Welcome to our spiritual warriorship class discussion of books by His Holiness Bhaktitirtha Swami. Of all the books, we are right now continuing in Spiritual Warrior 3, Solace for the Heart in Difficult Times. I hope you have a copy of this book, or planning to get a copy if you don't. And maybe you have the whole set. Congratulations if you do. And I told you that I've always said you can get them at Krishna.com. And now the publishers, harinamapress.org. You can go there. I haven't been there since they opened, but they were giving a free spiritual 12 qualities of a spiritual warrior card if you registered when you got there to get updates and things. And you can also read excerpts from the different books and see the whole contents of what's in it. So think about that, because these subject matters are really intriguing and I want to say mind-blowing, but not really, for our spiritual growth and development. And I'm feeling if you're on Krishna.com live, you are interested in your spiritual life. And if you came out of curiosity, hopefully what you hear about spiritual life as given by His Holiness Bhaktitirtha Swami will help you desire more to be spiritual. And if you've been in spiritual life for a while and maybe a little fuzzy or have maybe little doubt or confusion, hopefully the goals and technologies and tools that he gives us will help clear that, and you can move ahead on the road to reach the ultimate goal of being in spiritual life in this human body at this time on the planet, which is to reach the platform of love of God. So, let's pick up. I don't know, how many are in the chat room right now?
4.
4. Same 4 as last week, or do you remember?
Brenda Lee is here.
Oh, Brenda Lee. Okay. Okay, what we're going to do is to continue this chapter. We're almost done. Now, last week, and I reviewed, we covered reincarnation, fact and fiction, and also our karmic patterns. And those were two fascinating, interesting subject matters we discussed. And he states that spiritual warriors must examine the idea of reincarnation as deeply as possible. Now, why do you think that is? Because our present situation is strongly linked to our previous lifetimes. I want to ask a question. Of course, I've been asking and not getting any answers, and that's all right. But for those of you that have been following this, have you noticed any changing in your thinking during the past week? We've been covering this when you're out of thinking, changing your thinking in your interaction with others. I know years and years ago when I started studying reincarnation, it had quite an effect on me as in interactions. In fact, even with my children, I remember wondering what we were in another life. And it made me more, I think, attentive to our interactions. And basically, I remember trying to consider what I was to learn from our interaction. So Bhaktivedanta Swami is saying that as spiritual warriors, that we must examine the idea of reincarnation as deeply as possible. Now, given that we are eternal, now we've been through this a number of times. I like to bring back points that have come up over and over. We are eternal beings. Remember when we went through the section, You're Not the Body. Let me see if I remember what he says. Fundamentally, we are spiritual, transcendental, anti-material entities using the physical body as a vehicle. It's so wonderful, I can remember that. I was really intrigued by that. But that helps you even think about it, that eternal part of yourself that's inside that material body that you're using as a vehicle. So we have to remember this reincarnation and karma, that our thoughts and actions now shape what we will become. Okay? And I like this part. Our current life combined with the residue of previous lives. Now remember, lifetime after lifetime, we've mentioned it like millions of lifetimes we've been around. But that's what I was talking to someone today, stating that after all those lifetimes of coming and going and coming and going, this lifetime we have been given the gift, the good fortune of hearing about Krishna, of being reminded of who we really are, who God is, and developing a relationship with Him. And as Bhaktivedanta Swami keeps reminding us, knowing who we are as servants, and as we serve, we reach the point that we can go back home from whence we came from originally. It's really, we're really fortunate. I was also remembering, there's 3 books of Sri Brihad Bhagavatamrita by Sanatana Goswami. Beautiful books. And in one reading, when it described or stated in commentary that Krishna came to this planet Earth, his feet walked this earth, and it was like, oh my God, I am on this earth where Krishna walked, and he doesn't come all the time. So we're fortunate, and we're being given the tools and hearing what to do to progress, so that we can hopefully eternally end that cycle of going back and forth. So our current life right now, combined with the residue of our past lives, will determine our future karma. And we define karma. Do you remember that? What is karma? I don't know why I expect... You're raising your hands. Good. You remember? I do miss real face-to-face, but it's all right. I know you're there. Karma is what? It's the principle that every action produces a reaction. And somehow that action affects every living entity in God's creation. And I know we've used the phrase, what goes around comes around. And maybe we've used it lightly. Maybe we've used it at a moment of some distress. Or maybe we use it at somebody who we thought we'd show them. But it's a serious, serious thing to make us think and be mindful of what our words, action, and deeds are in the now moment. because the effects that we cause will eventually be reflected back to us. Okay? So just going, not only must we sometimes experience various miseries based on our accumulated karma, but we must also realize that the accompanying degree of pain, fear, and suffering we experience is a measure of the extent of our karma. Now that may sound pretty bad, especially if we're going through something. What are you talking about? But just listen, many of the calamities happening on the planet today are directly related to humanity's collective karma for the levels of disturbance that have been generated in the past. But as we develop greater understanding of karma and how it acts on us, we begin to realize that there are no accidents. Okay? But this is the part that I like. And as I said, he has this way of giving it straight to you what it is. And then he says, not all karma is negative, because we also carry with us the positive reactions for those activities we have performed in the mode of goodness. And I think we can understand that. When things are going pretty good, our way we are pleased with, or something happens really that, oh, look at that. Krishna's merciful. Oh, isn't God wonderful? Whatever. Well, that's also karma, because we've been around many lifetimes. We've probably been on many spiritual paths, and we've probably done many things in the mode of goodness, and that also comes around. So it's not all negative. We have to realize that. We can have a balance. We can even carry certain useful abilities and understandings with us from lifetime to lifetime. So I just wanted to quickly look over what we had been through. Now we're going tonight to look at another aspect to help us understand how we're growing and mature spiritually to reach our ultimate goals of being on a spiritual path. As human beings, we are naturally servants. We are always serving someone or something. Given this fact, we will either dovetail our efforts to the service of Mother, Father, God and their devotees, or what will happen? We will find ourselves serving our senses. Now, unfortunately, the frenzy to satisfy the unrelenting demand of the senses tends to leave us steeped in the modes of passion and ignorance. And I believe we talked about those modes of nature. Uncontrolled senses lead us to exploit others and our environment, whereas control senses does what? It helps us to serve others. A proper spiritual atmosphere reinforces the positive, healthy activities and relationships, and helps us manage our senses. As a result, we may find it easier to remain focused on serving one another. I wonder how many of you all were with us when we did the 12 qualities of a spiritual warrior. Hands? If you remember, or if you weren't here and you have this book, Spiritual Warrior 3, you can go to chapter 7, where those 12 qualities are. But the first quality that a spiritual warrior, he was telling us, needs to understand and work with in order to move along on the spiritual path is sense control and mastery of the mind. Remember that? And if you have this book, as I said, you can find it in chapter 7, page 181. Now, I just want to read one thing, not the whole thing. I just love sharing this over and over. Sometimes I wish I had a photographic memory, so after reading I will retain and come back. But what I have found, I've tried to do once I hear, I try to implement and practice it in my life. But he tells us the first step in regulating our senses and our mind is to look at the quality of our associations. Take a close look at the people you spend your time with. Do they make it easy for you to give in to your senses? Perhaps even encourage you to follow your lower senses? The saying, you can tell the character of a person by the company he or she keeps, is quite true. So spiritual warriors, and that's what we're here, learning, grasping to be spiritual warriors on the battlefield of consciousness, remember? But spiritual warriors may either elevate the conscious of the people we associate with, or look for new contacts with people who value God consciousness. Just wanted to remind you of that. So he goes on, each of us has a lower and higher self. And we touched on that when we were in Spiritual Warrior 6. Fanaticism. What was that title? Look, you see? Or am I having a senior moment here? Spiritual Warrior 6. Fanaticism, terrorism. But it's about peace, okay? So he's telling us that each of us, and in there we talked about the higher and lower self, but we must exercise vigilance if we are to avoid the temptations that arouse the impatient disobedience of our lower nature. Now, when we find ourselves overly absorbed in experiences of a relative or temporary nature, which provides no lasting sense of fulfillment, then we are choosing to serve our lower nature. When we indulge in activities that cause us to minimize community, reject family, and set one gender or one race against another, we are backsliding toward a negative, self-destructive mindset. When we accept the notion that life is only about giving pleasure to our material senses, we are embracing the culture of destruction for which we will sooner or later pay the price. We can't get away with anything. Okay? So he reminds us here, cheaters want results without paying a price. Criminals and manipulators want to get as much as they can while giving nothing. What's more, they even want to grab what belongs to others. If we pursue life in this way, the quick and temporary solutions we may obtain will be cosmetic at best. Now he reminds us, humans have been equipped for higher reasoning and for displaying compassion, humility, and ultimately divinity. That's our purpose for being here. Only animal life is designed to center on survival and sensuality. And animals are allowed to indulge in gross materialism because they're not capable of anything else. So gross materialism at the human level pits individuals against individuals, tribe against tribe, gender against gender, and reduces humans to a regressed animalistic state of consciousness, far beneath our capacity. But speaking of senses, I wanted to bring to attention those of you who may have read this in Bhagavad Gita or in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the story of Maharaj Ambarish. Remember, he was the king, and he is known for complete control of his senses and using his senses for serving the Lord. All his senses were used for serving the Lord. I want to share that with you, and then I have a little example, partial example of something that happened to me recently. But what we're told, this is from Srimad Bhagavatam, and as I say in the Bhagavad Gita also, I don't remember which verse it is with his story, but it's there. Now Maharaj Ambarish always engaged his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of the Lord. Now that may be difficult for us, but it gives you something to think about. What is your mind engaged in most of the time? Prabhupada tells us most of the time when he in his writing to think on Krishna 24/7, to be fully Krishna conscious. So that gives us what? Think about that. What am I engaging my mind in most of the time? Is it meditating upon the lotus feet of the Lord? Maharaj Ambarish engaged his words, used his words in describing the glories of the Lord. What are your words saying when you're speaking all day long, most of us, unless you live by yourself like I do, and then I talk on the phone. But what are your words saying? Are you glorifying the Lord? Are you describing Him? Are you helping others in their consciousness, Krishna consciousness, God consciousness, to see how merciful the Lord is, how He's helping them, or how they can turn more to Him and serve Him? Think of that. What are you doing with your words? That's a part of it. We're looking at how to use these senses. Maharaj Ambarish used his hands in cleansing the Lord's temple. Our home is our temple. Our body is our temple. The Lord dwells within our heart. We have Him in our home. We have pictures of Him. We have deities of Him. We have books about Him. And that's Him. The book itself is still about Him. So, do we keep those places clean? Think about that. And it's even what came to mind. You keep your mouth clean. The words that are spoken from your mouth. We talked about describing, talking about the Lord, Krishna Katha we call it. His ears, Maharaj Ambarish, his ears, he used his ears in hearing the words spoken by Krishna, Bhagavad Gita, right? Or about Krishna, Srimad Bhagavatam. Are you hearing? Are you using your ears for that? Are you just allowing a lot of mundane stuff to go in your ears? And today, with all the technology, what is that? iPods, ePods, all kinds. You can listen almost everywhere that you go without disturbing others. And everything now is on, what, MP3s and I don't know what else. So there's really no excuse for not hearing words spoken by Krishna or about Krishna. Maharaj Ambarish used his eyes in seeing the deity of Krishna. Remember, where were we reading? How we can't depend on the eyes, right? If they can't see the microscopic little organism that may be in your cup or your plate or somewhere. So, how are you using your eyes? Are you looking through a magazine that has pictures that really won't help your higher self? Or are you looking at pictures? Do you have pictures in your home of Krishna and Radha, Krishna and the Acharyas, so that when you see them, you think more of serving Krishna? His eyes he also used in seeing temples. Do you go to the temple if you can get there? Some people live too far from a temple. But sometimes it's wonderful to just walk in and see the deities and remember Krishna and your relationship with Him and know He's always, always available for you. He engaged his sense of touch in touching the bodies of the Lord's devotees. Do you love to see devotees? Do you greet them when you see them? Oh, Haribol, how are you? So good to see you. It's a wonderful thing to smile and greet warmly when you see devotees of the Lord. Now he engaged, Maharaj Ambarish engaged his sense of smell in smelling the fragrance of Tulsi offered to the Lord. He engaged his tongue in tasting the Lord's prasad. And who was telling me? Somebody was talking to me about and reminding how Prabhupada used to tell the devotees not to eat in restaurants and not to eat grains baked by commies and all. We don't know what effect that can have on our consciousness. Because I know Bhakti Tirtha Swami gave a couple of classes, spoke on when you eat out and eat in restaurants, and especially fast food places, the consciousness of the person preparing the food goes into the food. You eat that, and it can disturb your psyche, and you don't really know what's going on. Why I feel so peculiar? Why is this? But it's you've taken in some of that energy from the cook. So we're told, those of us who are following this path and the regulative principle, to eat Krishna Prasad. And then he said he engaged, Lord Ambarish, he engaged his legs in walking to the holy places and temples of the Lord. Now that, I wanted to stop at that point. My experience last week, I don't know if you all know, been going through quite a bit of distress with my legs, my back, and walking. Of course, you all been following know I had a couple of falls and all. But I was suggested a new supplement to take, and I started taking it. And last week, what's today's date? We're into May. It happened April 19th, I remember the date. I was at the temple, and I felt better standing up. There was less pain, and I moved around, and somehow I was led to walk. I walk with a walker right now, but I was led to walk out and circumambulate the deities, the temple outside. And I realized I was walking without the pain I had felt for such a long time. So the next day I came back and I said, let's try it again. It was like I couldn't believe it. And I did, and I circumambulated around twice. And it was so exciting. And then that was early in the week, and I set my mind that each day I would do another. And I got up by Friday. I think I was able to circumambulate 4 times. Now, my reason for sharing that, I'm just reminded as I'm reading Ambarish's, how he engaged his legs in walking to the holy places. But for me, my excitement was, it was like really the first time in a long time I was able to walk with comfort, without discomfort, and I was circumambulating the temple and chanting the Lord's name. And that for me felt really great, especially during this Purushotama month. So be mindful. That's all I'm reminding you, to be mindful of how you're using your senses, even where you're walking and how you're walking and where you're going with it. And Maharaj Ambarish, he engaged his legs in walking, his head in bowing down before the Lord, and all his desires in serving the Lord 24 hours a day. So he never desired anything for his own sense gratification. Why? Because he engaged all his senses in devotional service, in various engagements related to the Lord. And this is the way to increase attachment to the Lord and be completely free from all material desires. So if you're studying spirituality and you're endeavoring to be a spiritual warrior and a spiritual person, hopefully this will give you some idea to be mindful of how we use our different senses each and every day. And then that comes under what he's just been telling us about the importance of sense control. He now takes us closer by speaking about the kingdom of God which he says is not a myth. All ancient systems reveal that a spiritual realm exists beyond the material world. Now, as for why we do not know about the spiritual kingdom, there are many possible responses. I'd like to ask you, do you have any sense of a possible reason why we don't know about the spiritual kingdom? Anybody want to give a reply? How many are in there? Still 4?
So
Okay. Anybody feel like writing something? Anybody writing anything? No, just listening.
there's a person named Messenger, and he's just quoting the Sri Isha Upanishad.
Okay. Okay. Let's see how he states why we do not know about the spiritual kingdom. Most notably, we tend to use disbelief as justification for our absorption in immediate pleasure. Disbelief, is it really true? And rather than doing more investigation and research, we get absorbed in what gives us immediate pleasure. And for most, there's really disinterest in God and His kingdom. Now, another cause of our disinterest is that we ourselves opted to leave God's kingdom. Thus, to varying degrees, we have little or no desire to return there because we're caught up in our envy of God, and envy of God's power and our lack of surrender. The author tells us that paradise does exist. All ancient systems speak about it. Now, however, these discussions are especially meant for the welfare of surrendered or surrendering souls who have accumulated a sufficient amount of spiritual merit to appreciate the glory of the Lord's kingdom and to recognize the futility of pursuing the pleasures of the material world. Hearing this, it reminds me again of another quality of a spiritual warrior that, if we hear, may help us increase our interest. I made note of it if I can find it. It's quality number 6 that says material exhaustion and disinterest in material rewards. If we can reach that platform, we will definitely develop more interest in the Lord and where He is and how we can get there to join Him, get back home, so to speak. And He tells us that we cannot become God conscious if we think that material life is the all in all. And we know the scriptures tell us this world is not our home. We're paying attention. And when we hear that, are we realizing, no, it's not our home. I'm really tired of this, materially exhausted by this, and I want the process of returning back home, back to Godhead, where the Lord resides, and I want to reside there. He says that as long as we think life is just a process of manipulating various people and material elements, we will continue to be slaves to matter. We will continue to make different plans and adjustments. Aren't we always doing that? Oh, this doesn't work, then let me try it this way. Maybe if I do it this way, it'll work. And those plans and adjustments will give us temporary relief, but will certainly lead to more frustration at a further time, because it's usually dealing with something material. We must realize that there is much more waiting for us beyond this plane. Okay, so this, I wanted to return to that. These qualities, they come up if we've studied them and endeavoring to practice them. So he asked the question, have these religions lied to us? Have they just created a sham? Have they formed a coalition to dupe us? Of course not. They are giving us an essential teaching, and our spiritual progress is based on how attuned we are to that message. So we must hear. This is why hearing is so important. Hearing from the scriptures, hearing from the sadhus and teachers, and after hearing, imbibing what we hear, and then putting it to practice in our lives so that we can see. Are there any questions or comments? Yes?
There's a few questions.
Speak up.
Okay. Is the whole purpose of Hare Krishna to achieve Krishna consciousness?
Yes. Who's asking?
Someone named Messenger.
Messenger? Where is Messenger located? I love to know locations, if you don't mind. Any response? No?
He has a second question.
Okay.
We opted to leave God's kingdom. Please explain. Are you saying we lived with God before, or is this just metaphorical?
No, it's not metaphorical. As we've been reminded many times, we are eternal beings. And as eternal beings, we're part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. And as I stated earlier, that the quote, that we are spiritual, transcendental, anti-material entities occupying a physical body. At one time, we were individual spirit souls living in the spiritual world, enjoying with the Supreme Lord as his servant. This point keeps coming up, we're servants of the Lord. Now, what happened? We became envious. We wanted to have his opulences. We wanted also to be served, and became envious. And as I think even in everyday life, a child in the home, when you think you can, outmaneuver your father and want to act bigger than him or know more than him, and what does he tell you? Not in my house, outside. So the Lord, in His loving compassion, as we reach that state of envying and want to be Him rather than serve Him, He created a place for us to come to practice trying to be Him and seeing how miserable it is, and then endeavoring to go back home to Him, back to Godhead, back to the spiritual world. So that's the reality. And that's why first we have to know who we are as eternal spiritual being, part and parcel. And if you read Bhagavad Gita, he tells us that we are his fragmented parts and parcels, but we're part of him, and our role and purpose for being here is to cleanse and purify and realize who we are, a servant, and then serve in loving devotion. And in Bhagavad Gita he tells us how to do that. And then we can leave these bodies and take our spiritual form again individually and be back with him. I hope that helps. Any others?
No, messengers from Canada.
Canada. Thank you for being with us. That's wonderful. Okay. Are you new? First time? Look, I expect you to answer. What do you say? No? He's not answering. Okay, I'm just curious. I love to ask questions. And of course your answer's in the chat room, and I have to wait for my technician to read it to me. So I'm glad you're here. I hope you're hearing something that will help you in your spiritual life. And I believe we have time to close this chapter tonight. Although there are questions, after every lecture there are many questions. So let's see what the last section is about. A personal approach. Now, most philosophies concerning the meaning of life, he says, fall into four basic categories: materialism, voidism, impersonalism, and personalism. And he goes through these. We're going through these rather quickly, but if you're familiar with them, you can do more research on it. But materialistic philosophy, such as behaviorism and empiricism, emphasizes the primary of physical reality and the non-existence of anything called a soul. Right? The behaviorists, we are essentially a collection of conditioned responses. And the empiricists, only what is physically tangible and objectively measurable is considered a valid subject of knowledge. Only if you can measure it, see it and measure it. And we just went through a section saying you can't, the senses, the eyes are even faulty, our senses are faulty. So these philosophies tend to overlook the more subtle aspects of our existence. Now, in contrast to materialism, excuse me, voidist philosophies attempt to explore our existence beyond the gross physical level. But voidists believe that interaction with the physical world simply brings pain and disappointment. And therefore, they endeavor to go beyond the physical world and become absorbed in cosmic oneness. In this vast emptiness, all activity ceases and all individuals merge into a single unified consciousness. In this union, free from desire, activity, and even identity, voidists believe that they will experience fulfillment. But how can we do this when we are individual souls and we have individual attachment to the Lord? So there's no fulfillment. Now the philosophy of impersonalism sort of resolves the emptiness of voidism by accepting that a distinct creative force has given rise to the universe. Imperialism emphasizes the idea that everything is connected with everything else, so that beyond immediate physical experiences, we can discover a universal oneness, the ultimate reality, flowing throughout creation and present within ourselves. This again takes away from God being a person, a personality, and we are his individual personality parts and parcels. And that's the connection. It cannot be a oneness with the Supreme on that level. We're oneness in our quality, minute quality. That's the same as the Supreme. But we cannot be one with the whole. So by continuous study and meditation, impersonalists endeavor to reach a state of samadhi where they can merge with this universal consciousness. So you lose identity. And then what? You got to come back, take another body until you realize who you are, who you're connected with. Now, personalists believe that all aspects of the spiritual and material worlds have been meticulously created by an omnipotent and loving Supreme Godhead who takes a personal interest in every aspect of his creation. Because Bhagavad Gita tells us, what is it, 15:15? He's in everybody's heart. Now those who embrace this approach dedicate themselves in loving service to God with the goal, ultimately, of gaining his eternal association. And that's the question asked about Krishna consciousness. That's knowing who God is and knowing your relationship with him as servant. And then serving with the goal that by serving you reconnect to that eternal relationship you had before you left the spiritual world, and that you will connect again, and as the individual soul be playing and laughing with Krishna in the spiritual world. So as we keep this approach in the forefront of our minds, our otherwise ordinary pastimes of working, sleeping, caring for our families, and serving others begin to dovetail with our eternal mission of what? Of reconnecting with the Supreme. That's our purpose. That's our meaning for being in this human body on this material plane. This is the key to what the Bhagavad Gita refers to as Bhakti Yoga. Yoga means to link, Bhakti means loving devotional service. So we're to link back with the personal supreme personality in loving devotion, with loving devotion. The spiritual science of overcoming our material desires and redeveloping our thirst for pure devotional service with the Lord. And always, I just was reading Prabhupada, you just have to have the greed, the strong taste for this, and you, by hearing and chanting and following the acharyas, you get this desire and you realize again this world is not our home and that we can return home. In all actions, spiritual warriors, that's us, remain focused on the most important questions. How do we get back in touch with Mother, Father, God? How can we transform this take society into a wholesome, loving culture conducive to spiritual growth, spiritual exchanges, and spiritual activity? How do we dedicate our earthly experience to what is most important? And what is that? Returning back home to the kingdom of God. Great questions to think about to end this chapter. A spiritual warrior's view of the world. So, are there any questions, comments on what we've heard tonight?
You were just reading about desire, something. Just a few sentences ago, and Messenger says, I think everyone is born with this desire.
Desire? What the key, Bhakti, as we keep the approach, which approach? That the world was created by spontaneous. What? I'm not clear on what he's saying. A few sentences ago? Was it a question? Was it in the form of a question?
No, he's just making the comment that I think everyone is born with this desire.
What desire? How to get back in touch with Mother, Father, God? Yes.
This desire to return to God.
Oh yes, yes, because we're a part of God. We're away from God. So that desire is there. And that's why we have these scriptures. This is why we have Guru, Sadhu, and the scriptures to help us. This is why Prabhupada risked his life to bring us Lord Chaitanya's message, the Lord himself, of how to fulfill that desire. And this is why we need to know the difference between spiritual and material, because if that desire isn't turned to a spiritual direction, as we said earlier, then it's turned to a lower direction. Because in this age, we have the higher and the lower within us. So yes, that desire, it will never leave us. It's just how we're hungry and greedy and desiring to fulfill that desire. And then the Lord in the heart Krishna himself will lead us, guide us to a teacher, to a mentor, to a book, to a class somewhere, to a temple, to hear more, someone to instruct us lovingly, compassionately, to fulfill that desire. Oh yes, definitely. Anything else? No? Okay, so who's there? I'd just like to know.
Manjesh from Canada, Messenger from Canada.
Manjesh from Canada. I haven't been there for a while. Haribo.
Brenda Lee.
Brenda Lee. Are you new, Brenda? No, I think Brenda, are you in California? I know you used to be with us fairly regularly.
Yeah.
California.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't gotten Alzheimer's. Thank you for returning, being there. I hope this was helpful for you. And as I've said, I got courageous and I gave out an email if any of you want to just continue discussion with me. Mother Indrani 108 at gmail.com. I'm a little slow, but I like to hear from you if you want to continue this discussion. That's nice. Glad you're here, Brenda Lee. Who else?
Bhakti Shruti.
Bhakti Shruti. No?
Bhakti Shruti.
Oh, Bhakti Shruti. Welcome. I'm so happy you're here. Hope this is helpful. Okay. No questions? No comments?
Everyone says thank you. Yes, and Manjesh says he's making the effort to be here every week again.
Oh, wonderful. I look forward to hearing your name there. And if you have any questions, write them out and let's talk. I thank you all for being here. Prayerfully, this is helpful in your spiritual growth. And see if there's anything you heard that you can apply and practice in your daily life for the week. And let me know. We can share when you come back next week. Hare Krishna, have a wonderful week.